In the year 1967, the United States found itself at the height of social change, political turbulence, and economic experimentation. And at the very same time, the nation's coinage reflected that turbulence in subtle yet telling ways. The 1967 1-cent coin, known as the Lincoln penny, is one of those small, round witnesses of history that hides inside it a story much larger than its copper surface would suggest. To understand the significance of the 1967 penny, one has to begin with its very design, a design that by then had already been in circulation for almost 6 decades, featuring the profile of the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, created originally by the sculptor Victor David Brenner. In 1909, the Lincoln cent stood out in American coinage because it was the first regular issue coin to depict a real historical figure. Until then, the United States Mint had favored symbolic depictions of liberty. But in 1909, on the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, the Mint decided to honor the great emancipator with his image on the smallest denomination of American money. By 1967, that design had endured through wars, depressions, booms, and technological change. And though familiar to everyone who jingled coins in their pocket, its story was far from ordinary. The mid-1960s had seen a crisis in coinage when the price of silver surged and caused widespread hoarding of coins. People pulled silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars out of circulation, leaving banks and businesses short of change. In response, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, a sweeping reform that not only removed silver from dimes and quarters, but also introduced new alloys for the half dollar. The same law eliminated mint marks from 1965 through 1967 in order to discourage the practice of collectors removing coins from circulation during a shortage. And so the 1967 penny stands as a coin without a mint mark, regardless of whether it was struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. This absence of a mint mark makes it part of a unique 3-year span in U.S. coinage history. The composition of the coin remained traditional in 1967, a bronze alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, weighing 3.11 grams and measuring 19 millimeters in diameter. The obverse side carried the long familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln, facing right with the inscriptions "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to his left, and the date 1967 to his right without any mint letter beneath it. On the reverse was the image of the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959 to replace the earlier wheat ears reverse and chosen to commemorate Lincoln's 150th birthday. The memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo, was highly symbolic because it tied the coin to the monument in Washington, D.C. that had become a shrine to unity and equality. If you look closely with a magnifying glass at the reverse, you can even make out the seated statue of Lincoln between the columns. A remarkable level of detail for such a small denomination coin. The mintage of the 1967 penny was enormous because the mint was fighting against coin shortages. Over 2.9 billion cents were struck that year and distributed widely throughout the nation. This massive production ensured that the coin would remain common in circulation for decades, but while most pieces were destined for everyday use, there were also special issues that stand apart. 1967 was the second year of the Mint's Special Mint Set program, introduced as a temporary replacement for proof sets, which had been suspended during the coin shortage. Instead of individually polished proof coins, collectors could purchase special mint sets, which contained coins with a somewhat better finish than circulation strikes, though not quite proofs. These sets included a 1967 penny with sharper detail and smoother surfaces, and today collectors often seek these out as higher quality representatives of the year. The historical setting of 1967 adds further depth to the story of this coin. It was the year of the Vietnam War escalation, when American troops were heavily involved overseas, and the draft was reshaping the lives of young men back home. It was the year of major civil rights struggles, riots in American cities, and the continuing reverberations of the civil rights movement. It was the year Thurgood Marshall was appointed as the first African-American justice to the Supreme Court, a monumental step in the pursuit of equality. And it was the year cultural change surged through music, art, and politics, from the Summer of Love in San Francisco to massive protests in Washington, D.C. through it all. The 1967 penny circulated silently from hand to hand in gas stations, grocery stores, payphones, and candy shops, bearing the face of Lincoln, who himself had steered the nation through its greatest test of unity a century earlier. For collectors, the 1967 penny poses intriguing questions, because though it is common in sheer numbers, condition, rarity, and errors can make individual coins valuable. High-grade uncirculated examples, especially those graded MS-67 or higher by major certification companies, can command strong prices, since only a small fraction of the billions struck have survived without scratches, wear, or spotting. Coins from the special mint sets with deep cameo or ultra cameo contrast are also highly desirable. And then there are error coins, which always stir the excitement of numismatists. 1967 cents have been discovered with off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, doubled dies, and other striking anomalies. Each of these transforms an ordinary penny into a conversation piece, with collectors often willing to pay dozens or even hundreds of dollars depending on severity and eye appeal. Looking deeper at the cultural meaning of the coin, one can see the paradox of American money. The smallest denomination, often overlooked and even discarded, represents one of the greatest presidents in U.S. history, and in 1967, when the nation was struggling with questions of justice, equality, and national identity, it was Lincoln's face that continued to remind citizens of the unfinished work of democracy. The coin itself was also a tool of stability, helping maintain commerce in a time when people were uncertain about currency availability. Every cent produced contributed to restoring trust in the coinage system. Another important aspect of the 1967 penny's history is its place in the gradual decline of copper coinage. For centuries, pennies had been primarily made of copper, but rising metal prices would eventually push the mint to change the composition in 1982 to a predominantly zinc core with only a thin copper plating. Thus, the 1967 penny belongs to the older, heavier generation of bronze cents, which many collectors today prefer for their durability and aesthetic color. Over time, these coins develop attractive patinas, shades of brown or red, that appeal strongly to numismatists who classify coins by color designations: red, red, brown, or brown, depending on how much of the original mint luster remains. The coin's connection to broader history can be extended further if one considers that every penny is a marker of economic behavior. In 1967, a single cent had purchasing power far greater than today. One could still buy a piece of candy or a gumball for a penny. A newspaper might cost only a dime, and vending machines accepted pennies for combinations with nickels and dimes. The penny was part of everyday commerce in a way that feels almost quaint. Now, when inflation has eroded its practical use, the 1967 penny therefore becomes not just a collector's object, but also a reminder of a different economic era, a time when children might save pennies in jars to buy comic books or baseball cards, when millions of Americans still thought of the cent as meaningful spending power. As a historical artifact, the 1967 penny is thus both ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary in that billions were made and most circulated without notice. Extraordinary in that it encapsulates a critical chapter of American coinage policy, design, history, economic conditions, and cultural transformation. The story of this coin could fill volumes, because every aspect, from its design to its production to its role in daily life, connects to wider narratives of American identity. So when you hold a 1967 penny in your hand, you are not just holding a small round disc of copper. You are holding the legacy of Lincoln. You are holding the response of a nation to a coinage crisis. You are holding a reflection of the turbulent 60s. You are holding a fragment of history that, despite its humble denomination, speaks volumes about resilience, change, and continuity in the American story. And that is why collectors, historians, and even casual finders of old change continue to study, treasure, and tell the story of the 1967 penny, for within it lies a chapter of our nation's history too important to be forgotten.